In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, March 24th, here in South Korea. President Yoon Suk-yeol marks the 8th West Sea Defense Day with a fresh condemnation of North Korea's provocations and with words of praise for the sacrifice of South Korean soldiers. Meanwhile, North Korea's state media claims the regime has successfully carried out a test of a nuclear-capable underwater attack drone that can create a radioactive tsunami. Elsewhere, authorities in Montenegro say they have arrested crypto fugitive Kwon Do-hyung, also known as Do Kwon, who faces fraud charges here and in the U.S. South Korea will ensure that North Korea pays for its reckless provocations. Now, this is according to President Yoon Suk-yeol at an annual ceremony to mark the 8th West Sea Defense Day earlier on this Friday, during which he added Seoul will do so by bolstering its alliance with Washington, as well as the trilateral security framework with Tokyo. He also took time to read out the names of all 55 South Korean soldiers who lost their lives while seeking to defend the West Coast from North Korea. The fourth Friday of every March here in South Korea is a day to honor the fallen heroes who died in 3 major cross-border clashes, including the inter-Korean naval battle in the year 2002, North Korea's torpedo attack against the South Korean warship Cheonan in the year 2010, and North Korea's shelling of the border island of Yeonpyeong later in the same year. Staying on the peninsula, North Korea claims it has successfully tested a nuclear-capable underwater assault drone designed to destroy enemy ports. My colleague Kim Do-yeon has details.
North Korea tested a new nuclear underwater attack drone under leader Kim Jong-un's guidance this week. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported that the drone cruised underwater for over 59 hours before detonating in waters off its east coast at a mock target intended to simulate a South Korean U.S. military port. The exercise, it says, is to make surprise attacks in enemy waters and damage the naval capacity at major ports. The report also says that Pyongyang fired 4 cruise missiles on Wednesday to practice carrying out tactical nuclear attack missions. The missiles each carried a test warhead simulating a nuclear warhead and flew 1,500 to 1,800 kilometers. Each exploded at the intended 600 meters in the air, it says, and that the missiles proved their technology and reliability. The South Korean military has confirmed that North Korea fired 4 cruise missiles off its east coast on Wednesday, when Seoul's military observed such activities. This round of North's weapons testing comes as Seoul and Washington ramp up military drills. The two carried out combined military drills from Monday to Thursday, holding their largest field training exercises in 6 years. The drills played out live-action scenarios with the U.S. deploying its Striker Brigade. In addition, the USS Makin Island, a highly versatile U.S. combat ship, is currently docked at South Korea's Busan port for the largest combined amphibious drill in 5 years. The Sangyong drill, involving the U.S. Navy and South Korean Marine Corps, will start next week. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In other news, crypto fugitive Kwon Do-hyung, also known as Do Kwon, has allegedly been arrested by authorities in Montenegro amid charges of fraud here in South Korea, as well as over in the U.S. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
Terraform Labs co-founder Do Kwon has been charged with fraud by U.S. prosecutors. This came several hours after his arrest on Thursday local time in Montenegro. The CEO of the blockchain firm was a key figure behind 2 digital currencies that lost what's been estimated at over $40 billion last year. Kwon faces an 8-count indictment made public in the U.S. District Court in Manhattan. The counts include securities fraud, commodities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The whereabouts of Terraform Labs co-founder Do Kwon had been shrouded in mystery for nearly a year until police in Montenegro announced that they had Kwon in custody. South Korean authorities issued an arrest warrant for him last September after some 200,000 investors in South Korea alone were affected by the collapse of the Singapore-based Terraform Labs. Kwon, according to Montenegro's Interior Ministry, was arrested at an airport for having a fake passport. While the next step is for the South Korean government to seek extradition to bring Do Kwon to South Korea, there may be some obstacles in the way. Firstly, South Korea does not have an extradition agreement with Montenegro. On top of that, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission charged Terraform Labs and Kwon with defrauding U.S. investors, so the U.S. is also likely to seek to extradite him. And while the U.S. does not have an extradition treaty with Montenegro either, the situation may well become a fight to see who can get their hands on the disgraced crypto CEO first. If South Korea is able to extradite Kwon, the prosecution will likely focus on revealing that the profit structure of Luna and Terra was fraudulent and that it was nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. 신세벽, Arirang News.
On the local political front, the Constitutional Court has upheld the Parliament's prosecution reform bill but has acknowledged some lapses in protocol. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo explains.
The Constitutional Court of Korea on Thursday ruled against part of the National Assembly's legislative process last year that reduced the prosecution's rights to investigate. 5 of the court's 9 justices ruled that the People Power Party lawmakers' voting rights were violated during the series of bills pushed mainly by the Democratic Party. The dispute was brought up against the head of the National Assembly's Legislation and Judiciary Committee and the Parliament Speaker by the ruling People Power Party lawmakers Yoo Sang-bum and Chun Ju-hae, as well as by Justice Minister Han Do-woon and 6 other prosecutors. The court found that during the legislative process, the head of the Legislation Committee violated the majority vote rule based on the parliamentary law and the Constitution. That's when the head did not allow debate in the committee and failed to keep a neutral position as the committee's presiding official. The committee head also chose lawmaker Min Young-bae to be part of the Agenda Control Committee. Ahead of the passing of the bill, Min, previously a DP member, left the party and became a non-partisan representative. His vote allowed the bill to pass with majority vote in the Control Committee. The court, however, dismissed the dispute brought up against the Speaker of the Parliament for promulgating the passage of the bill. It also did not nullify the promulgation of the passage. The legislative process involved the revision of 2 acts in April and May of 2022, just before President Yoon Suk-yeol took office also later in May. The acts are the Prosecutor's Office Act, which lays out the scope of duties of the prosecution, and the Criminal Procedure Act. The revisions reduce the types of crimes the prosecution can directly investigate from the previous 6 to just 2, corruption and financial crimes. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho has called for constructive chip cooperation with neighboring Japan as part of efforts to boost bilateral economic ventures. Our finance correspondent Lee Rae-yeon covers his comments and more.
South Korea has announced plans for further cooperation with Japan following the bilateral summit between President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida in Tokyo last week. According to Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho on Friday, the government has set some of the financial tasks to be undertaken in order to continue to restore relations between the two countries.
Renewing bilateral ties is expected to contribute to Korea's export and domestic demand, plus restoring the supply chain of key materials as Japan lifts its export curbs, and bilateral cooperation in the high-tech sector, a more positive effect is forecasted.
To do that, the government will work on the best way to cooperate with Japan in terms of the supply chain as South Korea seeks to create the world's largest high-tech chip production cluster. The government last week announced plans to build the massive semiconductor hub in Yongin City just south of Seoul. Around $230 billion are planned to be injected into the project. On top of that, the minister also pledged to expand the talent exchange project between the two countries. This includes exchange programs between Seoul and Tokyo for university students and cultural exchange programs for middle and high school students. To encourage more travel between the two countries, the government also said it will work to increase the number of flights to Japan. Other plans include creating a joint fund for ventures and R&D, holding discussions with Japan to respond to both the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism in the EU, as well as joint studies on demographic challenges and climate issues. Meanwhile, plans to create 15 national high-tech industrial complexes across South Korea were also discussed. The finance minister said it will launch a government-private sector committee this month so that construction can begin as early as 2026. South Korea will also seek to boost the export of diverse items like OTT streaming services, AI, and chips, and expand to new export markets in the Middle East and ASEAN countries. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
In the U.S., pundits are sharing prospects about a broader financial turmoil while acknowledging actions by policymakers to address the recent failures of regional lenders. Credit rating firm Moody's believes risks remain of ripple effects moving beyond the banking sector to lead to greater economic woes. The firm spoke of 3 such scenarios, including rampant public exposure to ailing banks, heightened risk aversion by financial entities, and government policies that unintentionally fan financial fears. Ukraine is looking to launch a counteroffensive in the near future against Russian forces in its border, and President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging his foreign counterparts to expand and expedite weapons to his soldiers. Our Yoon has the latest.
As the war in Ukraine goes into its 14th month, the city of Bakhmut is the latest military hotbed. According to a high-ranking Ukrainian official on Thursday, Russian forces are now exhausted in this key strategic location, where Ukraine is planning to launch a much-anticipated counterattack very soon. Meanwhile, on Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed EU leaders in a video, during which he urged Europe to increase and speed up its supply of weapons, as well as impose additional sanctions on Russia, saying otherwise the war could drag on for years and have a negative impact on surrounding European countries.
If Europe hesitates, the evil may have time to regroup and prepare for years of war. It is in your power to prevent this. It is in our common interest to free Ukraine from Russian aggression this year.
Earlier in the week on Monday, the British Defense Ministry confirmed it would provide Ukraine with armor-piercing rounds containing depleted uranium, to which Russia threatened to escalate attacks in Ukraine. On the same day, foreign ministers of the EU endorsed a plan to send 1 million artillery shells to Ukraine over the next year, which was approved for a fast-track purchasing procedure. This plan was given political blessing at a summit in Brussels on Thursday, where EU leaders held talks with UN Chief Antonio Guterres to discuss the scope of support, from additional military aid to Kiev to expanding sanctions on Moscow.
We want to be a fully committed player when it comes to providing support. We want to act as Europeans in terms of producing, manufacturing ammunition and delivering ammunition to Ukraine.
Ukraine will be hoping these supplies can shift momentum in Bakhmut, with a Ukrainian official suggesting a counterattack could come by the end of this month or by early April. Yoon, Arirang News.
Apple Pay is now available here in South Korea, and industry insiders are weighing in on its potential impact on market dynamics amid the presence of peers, including Samsung Pay. Our trade correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Apple Pay has finally entered the Korean market almost a decade after it was first introduced globally. iPhone owners can now use the mobile payment service without a physical card, just like Galaxy users.
Thanks to near-field communication readers, Apple Pay can be used in convenience stores and large supermarkets like the one I'm at. But there are still many places where it can't be used due to the lack of NFC readers at other locations in South Korea.
Also, it can't be used for public transportation yet. Even though other car companies could potentially introduce the service, currently only Hyundai car users can use Apple Pay. One expert gave 2 reasons for that.
Apple Pay charges an additional 0.15% fee to a car company. There aren't many NFC readers in South Korea yet, so car companies are expected to wait for more NFC readers to be distributed before making decisions.
Despite these issues, Apple Pay surpassed 1 million subscribers on the first day of its launch.
I was considering switching to Samsung, but now that Apple Pay has been introduced, I'll probably keep using my iPhone, especially if the service expands to other cards.
Meanwhile, Samsung Electronics on Thursday kicked off a collaboration service between Samsung Pay and Naver Pay, which is a major partnership between 2 leaders in online and offline payments. That means users of Samsung Pay can make payments using Naver Pay and vice versa for a more enhanced online and offline payment experience. Currently, Samsung Pay is also in a process of interlinking its service with that of another tech giant, Kakao Pay.
Now that demand for in-store transactions is rebounding due to the lifting of pandemic restrictions, they might feel threatened by Apple Pay. But I don't think those partnerships will have a big impact on Apple Pay, as the winner will be determined by the convenience of Samsung Pay and Apple Pay themselves.
Meanwhile, other pundits say that although Galaxy dominates the domestic smartphone market, the market share of Samsung Pay for mobile payments is only 24%, hinting that Apple Pay may only become a threat in the South Korean market if there was a significant increase in the number of iPhone users. 신하영, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, an annual event aimed at offering a productive platform for those in the healthcare industry across the globe is underway here in capital Seoul. Our Kim Jung-sil takes us there.
Ministers and ambassadors from around the world were in Seoul to celebrate the complete in-person return of the Medical Korea. K-pop idol Super Junior's Ryuk was appointed as an honorary ambassador for the event. Medical Korea focuses on offering a venue for global networks by inviting healthcare and medical tourism officials and experts from around the world. Here at the event, the experts are sharing state-of-the-art healthcare technology as well as discussing common values as a global citizen. This year's theme, Journey for a Better Daily Life and Future. The event also focuses on creating business opportunities for companies both in South Korea and overseas. Event organizer Korea Health Industry Development Institute said being healthy is a global common goal and that they hope people abroad can also benefit from advanced medical technology here in South Korea.
I think Medical Korea 2023 is a venue to think about how to benefit global citizens with the knowledge and strength that we have.
Keynote speaker and futurist for technology and healthcare, Jamie Mitchell, said South Korea could take a leading role in the healthcare industry.
Korea has a state-of-the-art healthcare system, and so I think Korea has a real opportunity, not just for people in other places to come to Korea for great care, and it's not just great care in terms of healthcare, it's great care in terms of personal care.
Visitors can also take a look at some of the state-of-the-art healthcare and medical products made by more than 800 companies. Each company promotes its take on new and exciting technology in biotech, health, rehabilitation, and even beauty. Those that wish to check them out can visit COEX until this weekend. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, the CEO of TikTok testified in front of Congress over multiple concerns surrounding the app. In a 5-hour-long session, the head of the short-form video sharing platform, Shou Jae-chu, was grilled by U.S. lawmakers. They had questions about the TikTok CEO's relationship to the Chinese Communist Party and the safety of the app for young users. The testimony comes amid a bipartisan push for the app to be banned in the U.S. over national security concerns. This is because of allegations that TikTok collects users' private data for use by the Chinese government, and that young people using the app are exposed to content that could be harmful. But Chu repeatedly distanced himself from the Chinese government, saying that it had no control over the app. He also defended the app, saying that TikTok has done its best to remove harmful content. Chu noted that content regulation is a common issue in the social media industry. Meanwhile, the World Athletics Council on Thursday voted to lift its 8-year doping ban on Russian athletes. But despite the decision, Russian and Belarusian athletes are still not allowed to compete at international competitions because of a separate ban over the invasion of Ukraine. During the 3-day meeting in Monaco, the council also voted to ban transgender athletes from competing at women's track and field events, effective March 31st. The rule applies to athletes that have gone through male puberty
although the council said it would continue to consider the issue of transgender inclusion. World Athletics also tightened regulations for athletes with differences of sexual development, or DSD, a group of rare conditions that affect genes, hormones, and reproductive organs. Turning to Florida now, where an almost fully 3D printed rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral on Wednesday evening local time. Built by startup Relativity Space and called Terran 1, the rocket was made from 85% 3D printed parts and was launched on a mission nicknamed Good Luck, Have Fun. But despite a successful launch, the 34-meter tall rocket failed to reach orbit and eventually fell back to Earth after its second stage engine failed to start. Still, the launch marked the first time that a rocket of this kind reached and survived Max Q, the point where a rocket experiences the most dynamic pressure. Looking ahead, Relativity Space aims to eventually have its rockets consist of 95% 3D printed parts. And finally, we may know more about what caused the death of iconic composer Ludwig van Beethoven. According to a research paper published on Wednesday, analysis of DNA obtained from hair of the German composer and pianist pointed to a genetic risk for liver disease. There was also evidence that he was infected with hepatitis B, which can cause liver tissue to become scarred. Beethoven was also known to drink heavily, and it's believed that these factors led to his death at the age of 56. Known for classical music pieces such as Für Elise, the composer had a number of health issues, including chronic stomach pain and progressive hearing loss that made him deaf in his late 40s. But his DNA has not yet provided clues into these conditions. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's another dusty day with a dust advisory still in place in most of the western parts of the country. And unfortunately, we'll have to wait until tomorrow afternoon to have some breathable air clearing from the central regions. Unseasonably warm temperatures come to an end with a slight drop in readings, but still hovering way above the norms here in the capital. Meanwhile, a dry weather advisory has been reissued in some central regions. Southern provinces are covered with lots of clouds today, and Jeju is forecast to see rain into tomorrow morning with 5 to 10 millimeters in the forecast. Then coastlines along Jeollanam-do province will be quite windy all day today. Southern provinces are having daytime highs in the mid-teens, a couple of degrees lower than Thursday, and Jeju is having much cooler highs with that rain. Now, temperature swings continue this weekend, and please check the dust levels before heading out, and if it is too bad, refrain from going outside. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends Friday's afternoon newscast, but as always, we have our panel session coming up right after this break. See you soon.